Hey Molly, have you gotten any chance to network with our delegates?
Of course I have. I've met Catherine from Mexico, Nicole from New York and Canada, Rhiannon from Australia, and Leonardo from the EHL PSU campus.
We love how you never disappoint to get to know everyone, and so do our delegates from different institutions across the globe. Shout out to Paulina and her team for having you all here.
Woo! Oh, looks like it's class time. Let's welcome to the stage Dr. Shoemaker. He once served as a member of the exclusive education faculty at Cornell University, taught here at EHL for a bit, and is the former dean and now special advisor to the UNLV Hara College of Hospitality. Also, we would like to welcome the dean of the EHL Hospitality Business School, Dr. Akeem Schmitt. They will be sharing with us their vision and mission about the future of hospitality education. Please help me with welcoming them to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's a little bit a dip after the lunch. Good afternoon. I am actually in the fortunate position to welcome you all once again to EHL campus. And I decided that I start with the first question to our guest, because I know Stowe as an icon in the industry, and I'm very happy and fortunate to meet him at YHS, because you always hear about such icons in the industry, and it's a real pleasure to share the stage with you, Stowe, here at the YHS. But can I ask you to introduce yourself a little bit more to our public, and maybe also your former and current school?
Yes, I would be happy to, and I'm hoping it hasn't been a disappointment. It's always hard when you hear people's names and you meet them finally, you go, oh, I thought they were taller, or thought they were nicer. So hopefully I'm not letting anybody expectations down. But so I'm really honored to be back at EHL. I was here once, and really been coming here since 1999, and it's amazing what the school has done and accomplished. But at UNLV, so I was, as mentioned, I was the dean at UNLV from 2012 to 2023, or 2013 to 2023. And UNLV, it's the William F. Hara College of Hospitality. Before I became dean, we were known as the William F. Hara College of Hotel Administration. And one of the things I did was to change the name to the College of Hospitality to encompass everything that hospitality represents. We have about 1,600 undergraduates. We have a master's program as well as a PhD. One of the things that's unique about our college, which we did over the last 10 years, was we changed our curriculum. So it takes about 60 credits to earn a hospitality degree, and then you have your other credits that are part of the university. But of those 60 credits, only 46 are required, and we have 21 credits of electives, or whatever the proper subtraction is. And the idea is we wanted to create a curriculum that as the industry changes, our curriculum could change, because we could, we had essentially 20 credits to play with. And we have concentrations in gaming management, concentration in HR, concentration in events, concentration in food and beverage, as well as a concentration in beverage. And our students don't all stay in Las Vegas, they go all over the world. And one thing I'm very proud about is that our students have had incredible success, not only in the gaming industry, but the large development being developed in Saudi Arabia is being run by one of our graduates, Jerry and Zarella. And other graduates have done everything in the hospitality. Guy Fieri, who, if you're an American, have known him as for his TV show, is one of our graduates. So we have some great graduates, and it's really a great school. And we've always been one of the top three. EHL and UNLV are always, the top either one or two schools. Usually we're number two, they're number one, but we work harder. We're like Avis, we try harder. So that's our college, in a nutshell.
Thank you. Allow me also maybe to introduce our school to all of you. I know probably you have heard about it, but I'll do a quick recap of 135-ish years, a little bit less of history. So our school, EHL, is founded 1893. That's also the bistro name down there. That's why we have those 4 letters there. Our origins come from Switzerland, and Lausanne has been often a place for a long time for travelers, because it's a very nice region that we have here. And then we have a couple of hoteliers that came together more than 125 years ago and said, like, look, why don't we come together and create training, pool our training needs together and try to train staff for that region here. And this was our origins, and we stayed very true to our origins, and we are very close to the industry. We are actually not a for-profit school. We are a foundation, so we are run by Carol, that you have seen, I think, yesterday morning, that she gave a speech about as the president of the board. Everything that we earn at EHL is back invested into the educational path, and our foundation board is based on one important member, that is the so-called Association of Hoteliers in Switzerland. So they have a permanent seat and then make sure they represent 2/3 of the Swiss hoteliers, and roughly also over 2,000 institutions in Switzerland, and they make sure always that we are upfront on the trend of education, which gives us a very good proximity always to the industry. I've been here at EHL now for the last 12 years, and I can tell you, initially I wanted to stay 1 year. And now it's been 12. But the reason why I wanted to go, because I was always saying, like, look, I'm going to another university, and was shortlisted on another track. But when I came here, fell in love a little bit with the passion of the school, and I loved always when I see other universities. In other universities, the faculty is always in the classroom, and they are basically almost single-handling the educational path of students. And when I was at EHL, I always felt there's a specific vibe, and I always hope that also you find that there's a special vibe here at EHL. The entire campus is a campus that teaches and educates our students. And this passion for education and this joint unique ecosystem actually made me stay. And we started at my time, I got recruited to diversify the school from a monoproduct into a product portfolio. So when I started, the school had roughly, we have today 2,800 bachelor students. At that time we had 2,500, 2,400 bachelor students, but that was basically our student volume that we had. We had one master's program at that time that was struggling. It had 14 students. Today we have added a couple of programs on the masters. We have a master's program, we have an MBA program, we revamp our EMBA program right now, we have an MBA, and we have a lifelong learning exec ed center that adds roughly 600 to 800 students on top. So right now we have 3,600 students. We make 180 million in revenues at EHL, and once again nobody takes money out of EHL because we reinvest everything in our educational path. The beautiful campus you see here got opened and inaugurated three and a half years ago. It was we became just out of COVID, and I can tell you also it's nice to look at, but I always say, like, it allows us to do a lot of experiential things that I will probably talk a little bit later in the speech that we have. So when we were thinking about Sto and I how we run this, we asked each other a couple of questions here and there that we thought might be interesting for you for the topic, and then open up the floor for some questions and answers that you have. If you really have an urgent question to a topic and you would like to jump in, I think we are flexible enough to take this also right away. So if you ever have a question, say like, look, I would like to ask a question, a clarification, or a question on that particular point, feel free just to raise your hand, and then we take those questions right away. But I think, Sto, you have been around in the educational system now for a while, and given that it's about the future and the past of education, can you share a little bit how you see the educational landscape has evolved throughout the years of your tenure?
That's a nice way of saying I'm old. So I think what's really we're seeing in hospitality education is the growth of hospitality programs. When I was thinking about going to college and I knew I wanted to do something in hospitality, I grew up in the United States. The only place I knew of was Cornell, which I really couldn't afford, and Michigan State and University of Denver. Those were sort of the three schools that I was aware of hospitality. I unfortunately was not aware of EHL at the time. Otherwise, I would probably have gone here. So since that time, there's been many hospitality programs opening across the country. And more, we've also seen the rise of master's programs. I mean, you never really thought of hospitality programs as having master's programs. Now there's master's programs. Now there's PhD programs. Now there's executive education programs. I remember, I did my PhD much later in life at Cornell, and they had recently started their executive education program. Now, as mentioned, EHL has a program. UNLV, we do executive education, and that seems to be the trend. So I think that the biggest trend we've seen is more and more schools offering hospitality programs, and those programs moving more and more at higher levels for masters and PhDs. And I've also seen us move, like when I was applying for Cornell for my master's, which I didn't get in. I got in, but I had to go back to school before they would accept me. And I didn't have the time to do that. But I remember sitting in on some classes that they had a whole class on sort of meats, where you learned meats and slicing meats and cooking meats. And Chef Christensen was the meat person at Cornell. And I remember talking to him, and that doesn't seem to exist in many schools now. So curriculums have also changed, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And how has so I kind of described what I've seen that landscape. How has EHL kind of fit into that model?
Yeah, I think we at EHL, we always have two legs, I always would say. First, of course, our association that we have on the board makes sure that we never lose the footprint of and the proximity to the hospitality industry. And our main idea is always to say, okay, we need to be very close with a very practical hands-on learning journey. And we are often confronted with lots of problems of the industry that we need to integrate into our curriculum, because 50% of our students still go into the hospitality, traditional hospitality industry, and we always need to cater to our needs. And when I mentioned already this 50% go into the hospitality industry, there's another 50% of our students that use the education that we provide to go into other industries, which created a certain pull effect in our educational landscape. So when we were in 2014, I think the first program that we launched in 2014 was a collaboration with Polytechnic University, the School of Hotel and Tourism Management in Hong Kong, as well as the Hilton College in Houston. We tried Cornell, but Cornell didn't want to do it with us at that time, and then we said, like, okay, you don't want to, then we go somewhere else. So we did it with the University of Houston. And that was, we were long thinking about if we do a hospitality program or not. And our second program was actually a non-hospitality, traditional industry program. And why was that? Is because we realized that in our recruitment of our students, there were lots of other industries coming to our campus to recruit our students. And I asked, and the top three recruiters in this second half of 50% is banking with a slight bias to private banking. It's retail at large, as well as luxury companies. And what we always ask, I ask a banker and said, like, look, why do you recruit a student at EHL? And then they always said, like, look, I can teach him finance, but in the end of the day, what I cannot teach him is to deal with a client that wants to be dealt with in a certain way and that needs to be adapted to his needs 24 hours a day. And that is this soft skills and this performance is very hard to obtain on the market. So we realized that our student body has a certain attractiveness for other industries. And then we said, okay, what is then a hospitality education for us? And this is the biggest evolutionary step that we did at EHL in the past. We said, like, look, what is the origins of, does anyone know what hospitality in its true nature means? What does it mean, hospitality? I'm sorry, I'm a teacher, so I always ask questions. Does anyone? Yes, please?
Is the connection between two humans or multiple humans? That's the basic definition.
It's a connection between two humans, yes, and we even went a little bit further towards this. When you think about where hospitality comes from, it's actually before Christ, when people did a religious pilgrimage, and they needed to go to a certain place, that people are actually not only connected with each other, but there were some people that providing them with food and with a bed to sleep on, and they made them feel welcome. And we used this making them feel welcome, or the origins of hospitality, say, like, to make somebody feel welcome is actually non-industry bound. It's not only for one hospitality, it's making someone feel welcome is a skill that you can have in any industry. So we used that and said, like, why don't we create some of our master's program around that, the skills that you have to basically provide hospitality for other industries. Because traditionally, when we launched master's programs, I don't know who is here from the industry, but when I ask always a GM, do you need a master's? The GM told me, why? I mean, I basically work myself up. I need to go. It's a very hierarchical industry where you work yourself through the hierarchy. And they said, like, I don't need an MBA to become a GM. I got the MBA because I have done certain things, and maybe I want to have a career switch to a VP or regional head position in a corporate structure. That was maybe, but the main class it's like a very traditional operational industry. And then we thought, like, why not positioning as well some master programs for those skills that we bring hospitality to others. And this is, for instance, our DBA program or our master's program that we have is often in luxury management, geared towards those hospitality skills and competences. And that brings me a little bit to you, Sto. What would you say is the hospitality skills and competences, and how they changed and how they are applicable to other industries?
Well, some of them you mentioned. I think, so when I talked about a few minutes ago, the large number of hospitality programs that have come in existence, there's also been a trend for these hospitality schools to go more towards business schools. But I think when we think about hospitality, what do we do in hospitality that's amazing? We know how to crisis management, right? Everything seems to be, we plan, and as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get the first punch, right? So we're very good at overcoming obstacles very quickly, right? We're very good at planning. I give this example. I was talking to an executive once, and he said, well, hospitality, it's not rocket science. And I said, wait a minute, let's think about what does it take to launch a rocket? It takes a lot of people with different skill sets. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of logistics. And everything happens at the last minute, and you only get one chance to make it right. And in hospitality, we learn all those skills, right? We through our educational programming, when we're doing internships, when we're doing our cooking classes, when we're doing all the things we learned in a hospitality school, we're preparing for that time when we get out in the real world and suddenly we're confronted with a guest. And when the fire alarm goes off in the middle of the night, or there's a fire in the kitchen, or whatever happens, we're prepared for that. And I think as industry starts looking for what are the type of people we're looking for, those people who can think quickly on their feet becomes very important. And I think the other thing we teach in hospitality schools, and certainly in your classes you learned about, we talk about services marketing, and you learned about how do we take something that's intangible and make it tangible, right? We learned about the RADAR system, right? Reliability, assurance, tangible, empathy, and responsiveness. We've learned how to show our guests that they're getting great service even though they really can't see it. And I think that becomes so important in any type of field you enter. And suddenly, the rest of the world's going, wow, we should really look towards hospitality students because they have that skill set that we need. We can find people who are great at numbers or in accounting or revenue management, et cetera. And hospitality students do really well at those things, but they can also do other things. And later today, I'll do a little promotion, so you'll stick around this afternoon. I'm going to talk about how we bring hospitality principles into healthcare.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that as well, to say, look, what are the top skills that are probably needed in the future and how you teach them. I think more and more what we decided at EHL when it comes to education, if you enter into the master's game, to be very honest, and we changed our name. For those, we were EHL before, and now we are EHL Hospitality Business School, and there's a conscious choice behind that. We are the only hospitality business school that exists on a standalone, that is recognized by AACSB on a standalone basis. And what this means is that we entered into this business school segment because we said consciously, and it was 8 years process to fill out documents and get audited academically for academic quality. And what we wanted and why we wanted to do is we said, look, if we go into the other areas, we need to have at least a degree that is qualitatively well done, because we cannot go into that domain and into this area with a program, with an academic curriculum that doesn't fulfill the quality standards. And if you look around here at the Lake Geneva, the shores, you have 2-3 business schools in Geneva. You have 4 business schools here, of which 2 are top-notch with EPFL and IMD. So the market around us is a very competitive market that we are facing, and we thought, look, let's do this properly when we come in. And we always say we are more than a hospitality school. And what we mean by this is you can do a career in hospitality, but you can also go into other sectors and then come back into hospitality. And that's, I think, a very unique positioning that our school has. And what was always there's this trend of, it's very hard for newer generations to stay attentive for a long time. And I think it's not only your generation, but all our generations are very hard to kept attentive and tuned into a classroom. But what we realized is that no matter in which level you are, you can use a great campus facility to teach fundamental management principles. If you ever worked in a kitchen or in F&B, and the stress and the resilience that you have, we have 128 passports on campus. And this is a conscious choice. We could recruit from other countries more, but we have quotas because we want this diversity on the campus. And why is that? Because we want to have cultural agility, inclusion, diversity, all this on the campus experience, that we would like to have our students to experience this and to put them into group work, to also realize, okay, in any industry, we're very global. We need to drive customer satisfaction and customer centricity. How do we do this? We need to understand each other from a cultural aspect. And we realized that the campus itself can be a very good tool to counterbalance a very monotonous experience for students in classroom, but we put them into action often and teach them with management skills, or we have this very important first operational year where they experience a lot of aspects of the business that are very important for us, this hands-on learning to have. And in that regard, I would maybe say, how do you do a master's program and your portfolio developments, though, in
So it's a great question. And I think, one of the things as a leader of an organization, you have to look and say, given the skill set that's within the organization, given the environment in which the organization operates, how do I take it to a level where it will be successful and that our customers, which are our students, will also be successful? And when I became dean at UNLV, I saw that we weren't really taking advantage of what we really needed to do. We were becoming we were losing kind of our identity. And I realized that what's happened in the United States, because of the pressure of academic institutions, many of the schools that I mentioned that started hospitality programs suddenly were teaching a lot of business classes. And because of the financial situations, administrators were saying, well, wait a minute, business school teaches marketing, they teach marketing over there, we have two professors teaching the same thing, why don't we just have, instead of two people teaching 25 students, why don't we have one person teach 50 students? And we'll just merge them together. And you saw that happen at Michigan State. You saw that happen at University of Denver, which were leading hospitality schools, sort of being submerged into business schools. And when I got back to UNLV in 2012, I sort of saw this same thing happening. Our curriculum had kind of merged pretty much to what was happening in the business school. Even though all our graduates were working in the industry, our curriculum had become very sort of business oriented. And what I realized was that to make UNLV great, we needed to go back to what our basics were. We needed to be a hospitality school that certainly took information from business, but also took information from fine arts, from the entertainment side, took information from engineering in terms of kitchen equipment and all of that. And that's why we redesigned our curriculum so we could have the flexibility to do those things. And I realized if we didn't stand alone as the hospitality school at UNLV, we would be submerged into the School of Business. And unlike EHL, which has the advantage of being a standalone institution, we are a college within a series. We're just one of 13, 14 colleges at the university. And I realized that we needed to really double down on hospitality and tell people we're a hospitality program and we take advantage of all the other industries. And then our kids go into hospitality, but we also give them the skill set so they can have lifelong learning. And that's really how I position the school. Now, I'm no longer the dean. I haven't been dean for 2 years. They do have a new dean. Every dean comes in with new strategies and new plans. So what I talked about was how I led the school when I had my 10 years. Now someone else has the keys, and they'll do what they think is best at the time. And so, but that's how I kind of position, because I really truly believe that in order to be very successful in our industry, and I would encourage all of you students, like a lot of times I talk to students and they all go, I want to work in corporate, I want to work in HR, I want to do whatever. I always say, stay very, very close to the cash register, right? Because if you're not close to the cash register, it's going to be problematic when the downturn happens. And so what I wanted to do is make sure our students could be very close to the cash register, but also have the skill set as they moved up. They could take advantage of everything. And as IT or AI and all this technology came in, they would know from an operational point of view how to use IT to help them, or use technology to help them improve the guest experience because they've been at the operational level. So I would encourage all of you to not go for that corporate job, but go out and spend 3 to 5 years when you're young, you have the energy, and get that operational experience where you're working all the time. Because what you'll find in that operational experience is the camaraderie and the bonding you build with your coworkers after a big event, and you're just sitting down and you're having a drink and you're talking about all the things that went crazy and all the things that went great, and you have this bonding, and you'll build these relationships that will last you through the years. And we've tried to create those experiences, just like they're doing at EHL. We've tried to create those experiences at UNLV And we did it mainly because we wanted to make sure that my bosses, the provost, the president, the board of regents, and the state didn't say, why are we spending all this money on education? Let's just make it all one big college.
I think the switch, and if we now look forward a little bit towards the future of education, and I maybe introduce the topic, and then as though you share your thoughts, and then we should be like 15-10 minutes before the end, and then we can take some questions. But I think when I look about what's the future of hospitality education and how this changes, so I always I'm very framework oriented, comes from my Bavarian heritage, but I always think about context, content, and process. So I think the context of education completely changes. And what the context changes, it's do we in the future, we have a big discussion about, do we still need degrees? Do we need bachelor degrees? Do we need master's degrees? Or is this all badging and we do skills and we do on-the-job learning? So I think there's a huge interesting shift in how the future in education, how we learn. When it comes to the delivery, I'm still a believer in I don't want to have a plumber that got his diploma on YouTube. I want to still that something is fixed in my house. So it gives me confidence, somebody that take an apprenticeship and learned on stuff. So I'm a big believer in degrees, but how you get those degrees, I think the context will be hugely, massively changing in the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to how you get to degrees. And I don't know if you follow the discussion in the US, but I'll let Justo talk about it, what happens with college and community degrees and how they change, and what the current government has in place maybe for the educational landscape. But so the context is very much changing about how do you need a bachelor degree in the future in hospitality, or do you need a master's or an MBA degree in the future? What I believe is that the content drives us to have more flexibility. So in that regard, when you think about revenue management in the past was a huge hospitality topic. Today it's all about predicting future consumer behavior, AI. You need to integrate into the curriculum programming, dealing with big data. How do you do computational thinking? All these are aspects that are new to the curriculum, and I think in the future we will have to integrate and shape with the fast-paced development of the environment. How do we integrate this into learning methods? And I think for those that are probably graduated a couple of years ago, I think to keep up to pace and up to speed, I think there's always a necessity for everyone to update and refresh and rejuvenate a little bit the knowledge that they have. And the final part, when it comes to the process, I think it's the delivery of certain things. And I'm consciously, I did do this now since 20 years. I ask my students, no matter which age group, but mainly the results are very, very cool when you look at under 25. I ask them, read 5 pages and summarize me the 5 pages that you just read in a very business article. And what I always realize is the capacity of the newer generation to summarize the quintessence of a 5-page article is declining. Because we are trained right now to fast-paced access headlines. We have abstracts to read. It's a very fast-paced world. The capacity to solve problems and to be quickly in finding data is completely the opposite. The younger generations are super fast, where I'm not even aware of how to use it. But I think with AI and ChatGPT, if you probe them very perfectly, I think you can get a lot of information out. And the process of learning for me means, what is now the future for all of you? Is it great? Like when I was a consultant I got out of university in the beginning of the new millennium, the internet was super slow, and if ever, and there was no data on it, and we needed to be very creative where we get market volume, how we thought, how we do strategic thinking. Today, everything is on the tip of Google, but sometimes I think even in the educational context, we need to go back to non-tech just to make sure that certain competences and skills that other generations have learned, that you also have them, combined with the new competences and skills, I think this is a beautiful mix where you can be all powerhouses in the future when it comes to the educational landscape. So I think when it comes to the process, the content and the context, there will be massive change coming up into the educational industry. It's not by surprise. I think that the top 3 growing industries is one of them is education, and just think about the technology education, the backbone of education in the future with digitalization to individualized learning. There's a huge market, so it's a very interesting industry in the future.
And you bring up a good point about do you need a degree to be in hospitality? And what's happening in the United States is because the major sort of the huge universities like Cornell and Harvard, they've become so expensive, and people are beginning to wonder really what's the value of a college degree. Interestingly enough, only about 50% of the Americans end up getting a college degree. Many people start, but then they don't finish. And there's a real tendency in the United States now to not get a degree for education, it's to get a degree for a job. And people are going, well, if I can just work and get the same knowledge, why do I need to spend this money going to college? And what I think the challenge for us as educators is to show people why having a degree will help them with their job, right? Because it's not just learning the skills to do something. I'd like to think in education, we teach why do we do things. What are the different frameworks we look at that help us understand why the consumer makes decisions, why things happen the way they do, so that then when we're confronted with problems, we're not just doing what we learned from the person who had been doing it for 20 years, but we're learning about the context, we're learning about, what's the theory, what's the framework that helps us understand it to be better at what we're doing. And so I think that becomes something that we as educators and we as faculty have to be, there's a tendency, the way the reward structure works in the United States is you're a faculty member, you have to publish. Because in order to get tenure, which is a lifetime employment, you have to publish. Well, in order to publish, you have to publish in the right journals. And you have to do the things that will get you in the journals because you basically want to have a job for life. And your boss can ask you to do something, and you can say, no, I don't feel like it, and not get fired. So that becomes the trend. So then what do? I tend to follow what I'm rewarded, right? And then consequently, when I'm doing my research and what I'm learning may have a complete disconnect with what I'm teaching. And what I tried to do at UNLV is make sure that we hired people who had a passion for hospitality, who were doing research that industry were curious about, our research was relevant, it was rigorous, and it was widely read. And then we had faculty who had maybe been in the industry for a long time, had risen to a higher rank and level, and would come in and provide perspective. And I think that's really the future of education. And the future of education is also, how do we take people who have been working for a long time, who want to get a degree, but are not in the position to quit their job and go back to school, how do we provide them with an education? And I'll give you an example. So there's a restaurant company in the United States that's privately owned called Panda Express. And it's owned by the Churn family. They do probably $1.2 billion in EBITDA every year. And their employees are incredible. And what they've done is they have Panda University. And essentially what we did is we went in and we looked at all the coursework, everything they're learning in Panda University. We mapped it back to our curriculum. And we said that anybody who's gone through Panda University can earn almost, say, 20 credits of electives towards their hospitality degree. So now people, no matter where they're working across the US, can earn a hospitality degree by working with Panda Express, taking their courses online. So we're educating the workforce that was already there. There's a big emphasis, or there was, in the United States on diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we have a more diverse workforce? Well, in hospitality, we've always had a diverse workforce, but the diversity hasn't been able to rise to the top because of the lack of ability to earn a degree. we've provided them with that opportunity, as exampled by Panda Express. And I think that's the future of universities. We have to break away from, well, if you didn't learn it from me, you didn't learn it because I know all the knowledge. It's now, how do we meet the student where they need to be met with the skills that they need, and how do we as faculty really understand what those needs are for them to be successful? And I think that's really where I tried to take UNLV when I was the dean. And it was very successful with Panda. We've been talking to MGM about the same thing. And anybody who will listen, I tell them to start asking those kinds of questions, because I think that's the future of education. Because we've all been lucky. We've been able to get a 4-year degree. We've been able to get a great education and a great start. Not everybody has that opportunity. We as educators have to provide that. We have to figure out, of those 50% who started college and never graduated, why didn't we? And how do we use technology to make everybody educated to the skill sets so they can lead successful lives? And I think that's our responsibility. It's not that we're publishing in journals that no one reads except the people who edit us. It has to be, how do we take people so they can have great lives? And that's what I've always loved about hospitality. I always wanted to be a professional hockey player, but my dad wasn't a professional hockey player. No one in my family was athletic. But in hospitality, it doesn't matter what your mom or dad did. If we give you an incredible education like you're getting at EHL and all the schools you're going to, we can change your life. You can travel the world. You can do so many things that may have never been unavailable to you because your parents did something very different. And it's our responsibility as educators to provide that opportunity. And that's what I think the role of hospitality education is to give that opportunity to parent kids. And that's, now again, I'm not dean anymore, so I don't know where UNLV is going, but hopefully they're going in that direction.
Shall we open for questions?
Yeah.
Good. Any questions? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My question is for Dr. Shoemaker. Dr. Schmitt was just talking about now the power of big data and AI. What are some trends that you have seen in hospitality education that you saw fade away? And what are the trends that you think are going to really shift the industry moving forward?
In terms of AI or just in terms of education?
In general, in the hospitality community.
Well, this is for me? Okay, because Dr. Shoemaker is my wife. I'm just Stowe. So first of all, I think with AI, you're seeing more and more students turn in their papers written by AI. So that's not a good thing. I think what we are seeing is basically, I think what we're seeing is the industry is certainly becoming very data-driven, right? Through revenue management, through analytics to understand the customer, okay? As sort of mentioned earlier, we try to teach, at least when I was teaching, and I did teach a couple courses even though I was dean, was how do we become what I would call prompt engineers? How do we get our students to start asking the right questions? So I've been teaching part-time in Lyon at what used to be called Institut Paul Bocuse. And when I had the students do case studies or write a paper, I said, if you're going to use AI, you have to give me a list of all the prompts you used to get information. So we're trying to get people to learn how to think, to ask the right questions. And when I look at what industry is looking for, we did an event, and an executive from MGM came, and a professor said, she said I would never hire a student that did not know how to use ChatGPT, because I don't want a student to spend hours doing something that a computer could help them do it in a few minutes. And I want them to be able to learn how to be a good prompt engineer. So I think industry is looking for people who can make decisions, know how to use technology to help answer those questions. And as we as educators then have to make our assignments in such a way that students have to learn how to think critically. I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's how I would think about it.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your inspiring insights. As a final year student at EHL, I've always been really inspired to continue in the education route, but in hospitality. And I feel like I don't know which direction I should go into when seeing all the different possibilities that I can go to in hospitality and in education, and having both internships in both fields. I am still unsure of what pathway is possible in terms of that, if you have any insights or advice on that.
You want an EHL answer or you want an objective answer? No, I think we have I don't know if you're aware of, but we just launched 2 weeks ago a really exciting new program, the Exec Master with LVMH, where we said, like, look, LVMH wants our graduates. And they said, we pay you a 6 months internship. We give you another 6 months training for sales skills, and we do this in partnership with EHL for all our 72 luxury houses. So that could be one option, but that's the EHL answer, of course. The more objective answer that I would have for you is, first, it depends a little bit on your preference. If you want to really study and continue your studies with a master's degree, I would always go for complementarities. You know, you already have a good school with a good alumni network, and I'm probably, as I said, I'm giving you an objective answer, not an official EHL answer. But I would seek complementarities for often a master's and access to another market, to visas, to an additional alumni network. So you have that with EHL after 4 years, and probably a very strong one at EHL. So the question is really, like, where do you see yourself, in which area, in which region, and where you need another network. And then if you are in the hospitality sector and you said, like, look, I already know that I can enter into that industry. Do I want to have a more generalist degree for a master's, where I can maybe broaden up a certain skill set? Then I would even advise, you know, don't double down on hospitality. If you have already a very strong hospitality brand in your CV, plus a good network. So think about the region, think about what complementary competencies you can have from a network perspective as well. And sometimes going into difficult market areas such as the US or Asia Pacific region, I think they recruit always on local pedigree. So I would go for that as an official answer, objective answer, not the official one. The official one is EHL has great programs as well.
Yeah, I think I always tell students, and I did this myself. I went out, I finished my undergraduate, and I worked 8 years before I decided to do a master's degree. I finished my master's degree, I worked 5 years before I did my PhD. And in those intervening years, I totally changed what I wanted to do. I changed the kinds of questions I asked. And getting a master's degree or getting a doctorate degree, it's not about learning, it's about learning what are the questions I need, that I want answered. How do I ask the right questions? I think as an undergrad, we learn what the professor wants us to learn because that's going to be on the test. At the graduate level, I mean, I'm sure they hated me at the master's and PhD level because I was the person who, I was like a 5-year-old kid. Why? And I think the more experience you have in asking questions, the better degree you're going to get. And I agree with you absolutely. If you already have a really strong network in one school, then go get a degree in another school. I've told many students who love operations, but they want to get into either revenue management or they want to get into asset management, and I send them to Cornell. I don't know if you've ever heard of a revenue management company called Duetto, but Duetto was started by my student, Marco Benvenuti. He recently sold it for multi-millions of dollars. He was an undergrad with me. He worked for Wynn for a while, worked for Four Seasons, and he said he wanted to learn more about revenue management. I said, go to Cornell, study with Sherry Kimes, because she was doing revenue management at the time. He went there, got his master's degree, came back, did some more work, and started a multi-million-dollar company that he recently sold. And he had that perspective because he went somewhere else, learned something that he couldn't learn from UNLV. And if he had gone right from his undergrad to his master's, he would have never known what even questions to ask. So I think that becomes, I'm a big, even though it takes time, but look, we all live for a very long time, and you're going to be working for a very long time. So taking a 2 or 3 year sabbatic to go back to school, you shouldn't worry about that because you're going to get the knowledge. You know, I left a great job, went back to make nothing, made money, went back and earned nothing at doing my PhD, but I've had an amazing life. And I took the time to learn, and I think that's what I would recommend. There's no point rushing to get things done.
If time maybe for one or two questions left. Two more, okay. Then we do, I think, the gentleman in the back, and then there was this lady here before you, so I would take 1, 2. I have no preference, so sorry for that.
Thank you very much. I am program manager at Swiss Hotel Management School, here 2 hours away from here. And I would like to ask you, if possible, Dr. Schmitt, in this rapidly evolving industry, hospitality industry, educational industry, how is your institution investing in faculty development to stay ahead of a changing industry and make sure that you manage to adjust the curriculum quickly enough to be competitive?
So, was that for me? Who was that question for?
Both, if possible.
Oh, okay.
Please.
You can go ahead and answer. I've been answering a lot.
But you do a very good job at answering questions.
So what I can say really quickly is that the question that as I understand it, is how do we make sure our faculty are always on top of everything? And the question the way that I did it when I was the dean, and again, I'm not the dean any longer, was we basically would pay faculty to go in the summer to go work in industry, to get a faculty internship where they would be, to go work with an industry person, to learn whatever area that was in so they could be working into it. And then we also hired faculty who, what we called faculty in residence, who were industry people who were teaching full-time, and we would pair them with our research faculty so that they would have those connections within the industry as well as to find out what the topics were. And that's how we kept our faculty aligned.
Yeah, same answer in a very nutshell from our side. I think we don't send them to internships, but we are working very closely with industry to bring them into the classroom, to stay up front and then to co-teach and co-publish as well. We are running, I think, more than 20 faculty development workshops on all our campuses, either in Singapore, in Pasuka or Kur. We have pedagogical investors that actually make sure that our faculty stays up to date with the latest technology, and we train them on this. We have faculty also experimenting with ChatGPT as setting up classes in the future, so we support them very heavily. And we recruit. We currently recruit 6 to 8 faculty in other areas where we invest constantly into our faculty, into new competencies and new programs. And that's a little bit the mix that I would like to add to what my colleague just said. Thank you. And then the last question we have. We're good in time? Yes. Okay, quick.
Hello. I'm actually a delegate from Michigan State University, and I found it very interesting talking about business schools that morph with hospitality programs and vice versa. So I was a little curious if you saw a general hospitality curriculum that you believe was morphing into a general business curriculum, classes like marketing, advertising, things like that. Do you believe those classes should be omitted from hospitality curriculums and replaced with more specific classes? Or do you believe they should be taught in the hospitality context, so marketing within hospitality, et cetera, if that makes sense?
I have a very, if you look at the numbers that we are facing right now, I think hospitality and tourism will be 11% in the future projected for global GDP. We are currently at 9%. We have a double-digit growth on an annual basis. It becomes much more complex. The entire hospitality scene, it's about destination management in the future, and where you need not only to have the right hotel, but the way to the hotel, the infrastructure, the logistics, the supply chain, everything gets connected in that regard. Plus, you have also the sophistication of the service business all around the world, where hospitality skills and competences become much more important. And omitting those subjects would actually limit and give the space to others to do that. I think there's space in the hospitality. I'm super happy to be at a hospitality school because I think hospitality in the future will play a completely different role. And I would actually double down not only on the vocational and the operational aspects, but on marketing and the other more business topics that you have, accounting, finance, real estate investment, all this. I think we have a certain expertise in this, and omitting this would actually be a disadvantage for our students. So I think I would rather say no. I'm very opinionated about this, and just from an accreditation basis, I think you need also to have a certain generalistic knowledge that you then contextualize in service, in hospitality, or in other industries, and I think our students should be able to do that. So I would say I would not omit them.
Yeah, I would agree. You have to teach the hospitality context. I mean, at UNLV, we teach hospitality marketing. We teach, hospitality finance. Marketing and services is so different than marketing for consumer goods. So it has to be part of the curriculum, and making sure that the faculty who are teaching those classes have an understanding of hospitality so they can make it very contextual. And I think that's why schools like EHL and UNLV, even though we do teach business school classes, we teach it very contextual, and we prepare you for all kinds of industries, and Michigan State's along those lines.
So thanks so much for the panel. A big thank you to the organizers. I think YHS is we are always super proud and super impressed that you host this on our campus. So thanks a lot for the impeccable organization, and thanks all to the audience for your great questions.
Yes, it's great to work with you, and this is an amazing institution. All the schools you go to are all amazing institutions. And at the end of the day, the only thing I could say is it's not what the school gives you, but it's what you get out of the school by asking the right questions, being involved, getting involved with the faculty, being the person like I was, standing at the door during office hours, and not being afraid you're paying for knowledge that faculty have, and shame on you if you don't ask them and get involved. So that's how I would end it. Good job.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your insights. People is really the centric of hospitality, and we cannot run the industry without people. Also, learning by doing is really in the DNA of hospitality and EHL. And learning and education would never be limited by theory and classrooms.
I love that. I also loved how they talked about the Panda Express program. I thought that was so interesting. So now we will take a short break while we set up for our next session, the SMAC Live Hospitality Podcast. So we're going to take about 15 minutes to set up. So please be back here by 2:05 so we can start on time. Thank you.